Hello everybody, today I'm going to show you step by step how I'm going to can up these pears. Don't they look great? Now here's a little information before we get started. A bushel of pears will produce about 26 to 28 quarts when all is said and done. And when you peel your pears, you'll place them in a saltwater bath, and this will keep them from turning brown. Mix 2 tablespoons of salt to 1 gallon of water, so that's your ratio. 2 tablespoons of salt to 1 gallon of water. Then you'll need to make a light syrup to pour over the pears in the jars. So you'll mix 1 cup of sugar to 3 cups of water. So that ratio is 1 to 3. Now if you're going to do some home canning, it helps to have some tools. These are jar lifters, and of course your canner. In this case I'll be using a pressure canner. You'll need some pots, and I'll be using this one for my salt bath for the pears. And that little pan there is where I heat up the lids. Over here I'll be using this for my syrup, that light sugar syrup, and of course there's the canner. Now as we go along here, there's some other things that are handy to have. Now this is the weight that goes on top of that canner lid. Of course I've got my measuring cup to measure out the water for the canner. Now one of the advantages of the pressure canner is that it only requires that you boil 3 quarts of water. Relatively small amount of water compared to the water bath canner. In the bottom of the canner is this rack that keeps the jars off from the bottom. Now as you peel your pears, you're going to put them in this solution of salt water, and you mix it 2 tablespoons of salt per gallon of water, and that'll keep your pears from turning brown. This is your pressure canner lid, and there's your steam vent, and you'll be putting that weight on that vent. I'll show you that later. And but that's where the steam is allowed to come out of the canner as you boil. Now as your canner builds pressure, this little gizmo here will pop up, and that will block the steam from escaping, and it'll start to build pressure. That rubber grommet right there is a safety feature. That'll blow out of there if your canner overpressurizes. If you watch your canner and maintain the proper pressure, you will not have a problem. People get into trouble when they leave their canner unattended. Use common sense. Today's pressure canners are very safe. Before you begin, inspect the canner and lid. Make sure the rubber seal is in good condition. Then look up through the steam vent and make sure that is clear and clean. Make sure the pop-up gizmo is clean and moves freely. Pressure canners operate at a higher temperature than water bath canner and kill more bacteria. They are faster with shorter processing times too. They're recommended for home canning, so don't be afraid of the pressure canner. Here's the rubber seal I was telling you about. Alright, so let's can up these Bartlett pears. Now I'll talk about the canner as we go along, but of course the first step is to peel the pears. And there's other ways you can do this. You can use a peeler. I've just always used a paring knife. And as I get going, I get in the groove here. But you're basically going to try to pare off as little bit of that skin so that you don't waste the pear. And so you go down around, and I have my own little technique there that I use. I'll show you a little up close there. But my wife always said you get out of the jar exactly what you put in. And so you want to do a nice clean job and get those skins off from there. And then you need to core the pear. And so I take the tip of my knife and go down around that core. It's like an apple core. And you're going to take that out of there. And then you'll place your nice pear, half pear, in the saltwater solution. Those pears are slippery little fellas. Now when you core the pear, you'll be able to feel with your knife. It's kind of a stringy, fibery middle there that you're going to cut out of there. Now canning's always a lot of fun, and it's more fun if you have a partner. My wife and I used to do this together, and while we're peeling, we're talking about what's going on and so on. But today I'm going to be doing the whole process by myself, and you can kind of see my technique. I skip over, and then I go back and peel off in the middle. See there, I've skipped a slot, and then I go back and peel off. You'll get in the groove as you do it, and you'll find your own way that you like to go about it. And you can actually peel these pears and core them pretty quickly as you get, like I say, as you get in the groove. Here's a close-up of the core there in the middle that you're going to be removing, and like I said, you can feel that. You can get a sense of how much of that you're going to take out of there. So here's this saltwater solution, keeps the pears from turning brown. And now we'll get our lids and our rings out and get those ready. The pressure canner that I have will hold 7 quarts, and so I usually get out 7 or 14 of them and get them ready. And then you'll place them in this little pan and heat it up to almost boiling. You want those lids to be hot. Now last night I ran my jars through the dishwasher, so they're all ready to go. And now it's time to pack the jars, and I've replaced that salt water with a nice fresh water to rinse them real well. And as my wife usually would pack the jars because her hand would fit right down in that jar, and she could reach right down in there and place those pears just so and get them nice and a nice tight fit in the jar. And I already know that I'm going to have a lot of airspace in there, and when we get all done, you'll see how that works out. But my hand won't fit down in the jar, so that's the way I'm going to have to do it. Now here's this light syrup mixture, and for your light syrup, you'll mix 1 cup of sugar to 3 cups water, so that's your ratio, 1 to 3. And you'll fill those jars up, leaving about a 1/2 inch of space at the top. And then I go around with a knife. I'll stick a knife down in there and kind of wiggle things around and get the air out. This is a little trick I use. I stick my finger in that hot water and run around the top of the jar, clean off that top of that jar so that the lid has a nice place to seal. You don't want any pear pieces or any crud on there. And then as you screw on your ring, you want that to be pretty tight, not too tight. I pack my pears in the jars cold. A lot of instructions say to place the pears in the light syrup and heat them up and then put them in the jar. I have found that this makes my pears mushy. So I place the cold pears in the jar first, then pour the hot syrup over them. When you go to eat your pears, they will not be mushy. Now, if you're not careful, you can have your entire kitchen sugar coated because you're working with this mixture of sugar and water. So I always place towels around, where I'm going to be working, and then later I can just throw them in the washing machine. It keeps your kitchen nice and neat. So here we go, sticking another ring on there and put jar number 2 in the canner. Okay, well, I've got all 7 jars packed, and here goes the 7th one in the canner, and we'll get ready to put the lid on. We'll put the top on the canner, and you turn it just a little bit like that, and it locks it right in. That cannot come off there now. Now you refer to your pressure canner book for pears, and there it is, and that'll tell you exactly how many pounds pressure you'll need in your pressure canner, and how long you're going to run. Now the book says to raise your pressure to 6 pounds and run for 10 minutes. Alright, so here we go. You've got the fire on the canner, and you wait till you see steam coming out of that vent pipe there, and you can see it. And when that steam really gets blown out of there, you'll set your weight on. Now the canner will start to build pressure. And at a certain point, that little gizmo will pop up. You can see it popped up right there. Now the canner will start building pressure, and you just watch your gauge. And at this point right here, I've got my fire turned all the way up to high, and it's building pressure. We're at 5 pounds right there, you can see on the gauge. And when that gets up to 6 pounds, the next little mark right there, I'll turn my fire down almost all the way down to low. And that's another advantage of the pressure canner. You're only going to be running, there we are, 6 pounds. And there's my timer. I'll set that for 10 minutes and away we go. But you're only going to be running your fire real low for that 10 minutes. So using the pressure cannon, you save fuel. You're using a lower fire to maintain that 6 pounds pressure. Alright, so we've got our canners run 10 minutes, and so we shut the fire off, and now we wait and let that canner cool down. And after that plug is dropped right there, you can turn the lid off because the pressure has been reduced to 0. Now I always turn the lid towards me because that hot steam is going to come out of there, and you'll get that steam to go away from you by lifting the lid toward you. Now you'll use your jar lifters and take the jars out. Now I noticed right off the bat that this first canner, I'm going to have trouble with a couple of these jars. One of them, you can really see the lid is bent. I don't know if you can see it right there. And that's caused from air being in that jar, or it's a bad lid, one or the other. But most likely it's air in the jar that I didn't get out of that jar. So like I said, my wife used to pack those jars and we hardly ever had any trouble. Here's my rinse pan now. I'm using a blue pan there to throw the pears in to get them rinsed off from the salt water. Now here we go, we'll pack those jars, and I'll see this time if I can get them down in there a little bit better, and then make sure I really work at it a little bit to make sure that air that's trapped in that jar gets out of there. Like I said, air can get trapped in those jars, and you can take a knife and stick it down in the jar and wiggle the pears around. That helps to get the air bubbles that are trapped under the pears to come to the surface. Also, gently tipping the jars side to side will work some air bubbles to the top. Okay, let's pack some more pears. You can see how I'm placing those pears down in there and kind of pushing them down in to get them packed in. And leave a space at the top, like I mentioned before. Alright, now we're going to take out the second batch. So here we go. Canner is cooled off and the pressure is reduced down to 0 again. And oh yeah, these are looking a lot better. I think all of these jars will seal just fine. Now I thought I had a clip here that showed how I take this knife, and just take a butter knife, and after I pack the jars with the pears, I stick that butter knife down around the outside, you know, down inside there, but around the outside, and I kind of wiggle it around, and the air will come up to the top and escape. Then you put your ring and seal on, and you'll have better luck. So we've got 14 quarts of pear out of that half bushel. So there you have it. That's how I can my pears using a pressure canner. You don't want to be afraid of that pressure canner. Just stay in the kitchen and watch your pressure as it's going. You'll be just fine. So if you're just getting started canning your own fruits and vegetables, I hope this video was helpful. Like I said before, you get out of the can exactly what you put in, and there's just a lot of satisfaction knowing that you're eating homegrown, home-canned fruits and vegetables, and there's no additives in that jar, just good old-fashioned food. And the home-canned vegetables just taste better. Thanks for watching, everybody, and if you like the video, consider subscribing to Tin Tools 99. Oh yeah, and hit the like button too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.